how do you catch a ghost? Not just any ghost, but a billion-dollar phantom that can fly at 50,000 feet, invisible to almost every radar known to man. This is the RQ-170 Sentinel, famously nicknamed the Beast of Kandahar. It is the CIA's most guarded secret, a masterclass in stealth technology and encrypted satellite links. This machine was built with a single terrifying protocol. If it ever loses its connection to home, it is programmed to automatically return to safety or effectively delete its own flight data to keep its classified secrets out of enemy hands. But on December 8, 2011, the world woke up to an image that defied every law of military logic. Sitting on a stage in Tehran was the beast itself. It wasn't a pile of charred wreckage or a collection of shattered carbon fiber. It was perfectly intact. Not a single bullet hole, no signs of an explosion, no scorch marks from a crash. Just a pristine, high-tech predator sitting under Iranian flags like a prized trophy at a museum. The Pentagon was stunned. The CIA was silent. How did the most advanced stealth drone in history, an aircraft protected by a billion-dollar shield of technical security, get brought down without a single missile being launched? It comes down to a staggering contrast in tactical philosophy. The United States spent decades and billions of dollars perfecting the art of being invisible. But Iran? They didn't need to see the ghost. They just needed to lie to it. They executed a technical sleight of hand so precise, it tricked the drone's brain into landing itself directly into the hands of its enemies. This was the ultimate technical heist, a high-stakes game of electronic deception. But how did the most sophisticated machine ever built fall for such a simple trick? Find out, we have to look at the moment the beast lost its mind. December 4th, 2011. It started as just another Sunday at Shindand Air Base in western Afghanistan. Inside a windowless, air-conditioned trailer, a team of pilots and sensor operators sat in front of a glowing bank of monitors. They weren't flying a typical Predator or a Reaper. They were babysitting the most expensive, most secretive piece of aviation technology on the planet, the RQ-170 Sentinel. To the public, this plane didn't even exist. To the men in that trailer, it was a ghost they were guiding through the jagged peaks of eastern Iran, flying thousands of feet above the earth, completely invisible to the Iranian radar networks below. Everything was routine. The telemetry was green. The satellite link was solid. But then, at exactly 2:15 p.m. local time, the primary screen did something it was never supposed to do. Went dead. Static. Total silence. In an instant, the calm inside that trailer evaporated. All hell broke loose. Operators began frantically cycling through emergency frequencies, trying to re-establish a handshake with the drone's onboard computer. They tried the C-band links. They tried the Ku-band satellite backups. Nothing. It was as if the aircraft had simply ceased to exist. Look at the flight path here. The Sentinel was deep inside Iranian territory, circling near the city of Kashmir. This wasn't just a lost connection. It was a geopolitical nightmare. Under normal circumstances, if a drone loses its link, a lost link protocol kicks in. The onboard computer is programmed to take over, climb to a safe altitude, and use its pre-programmed GPS coordinates to fly itself straight back to the border. It's a failsafe. It's supposed to be foolproof. But as the minutes ticked by, the tracking station at Shindand remained silent. The drone wasn't returning. It wasn't climbing. It was just gone. The panic immediately traveled up the chain of command, all the way to Langley and the White House. The CIA was now staring at a black hole on their maps. They had a 66-foot wingspan of top-secret stealth coatings and advanced sensors drifting somewhere over enemy soil, and they had zero way to talk to it. The tension in the Situation Room was suffocating. Every second that passed was another second the Iranians could be closing in on the crash site. Then came the scorched earth debate. Commanders were faced with a choice that could define the next decade of American foreign policy. Option 1. Send in a high-stakes Delta Force team or a team of Navy SEALs via stealth helicopters to find the wreckage and blow it up. Option 2. Launch a precision airstrike using F-15s to turn the downed drone into a pile of melted plastic and carbon fiber before the Iranians could even find it. But there was a massive catch. An airstrike or a ground raid inside sovereign Iranian territory was by definition an act of war. The mission went sideways. If a helicopter crashed or a pilot was captured, the US would be looking at a full-scale military conflict with Iran. The risk was astronomical, and here is the crazy part. Because the RQ-170 is a stealth aircraft, the US military's own search and rescue teams couldn't find it. The very technology that made it invisible to the enemy now made it invisible to its creators. They were hunting a ghost in a pitch-black room. As the hours dragged on, the hope of a lost link recovery began to fade. The military was forced to wait and watch, praying that the drone had crashed into 1,000 pieces in some remote, inaccessible mountain range. They calculated the odds. They hoped the impact had triggered the internal data wipe protocols. They hoped the Iranians would find nothing but a hole in the dirt. But at CIA headquarters, the analysts were starting to notice something unsettling. There were no reports of an explosion, no satellite imagery showing a smoke plume or a debris field. The Iranian state media was eerily quiet. It was a silence that felt heavy like the calm before a storm. The beast of Kandahar hadn't just crashed. It had vanished into thin air. The US was left in a state of absolute hong-mong, a total paralysis of intelligence. They were playing a guessing game with a $100 million asset. Did the engine fail? Did the software glitch? Or had the unthinkable happened? Had the ghost been caught? The answer to that question would eventually shake the foundation of Western military intelligence. Because while the Americans were frantically checking their satellite links and debating airstrikes, 300 miles away, a group of Iranian electronic warfare specialists were celebrating. They weren't looking at static. They were looking at a perfect high-definition feed of the Iranian landscape, delivered straight from the eyes of a captured American god. But how did they do it? How did they manage to bypass the most advanced encryption on the planet without firing a single shot? To understand that, we have to stop looking at the American trailers in Afghanistan and start looking at the shadows of the Zagros Mountains, where a much older, much more patient game of deception had been unfolding for years. It turns out, the Iranians hadn't just been waiting for the drone to fail. They had been teaching it how to betray its masters. To understand the capture of the RQ-170, you have to realize that this wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a one-in-a-million software glitch. It was the culmination of a decade of silent, obsessive study. While the world was focused on the sheer power of the American military machine, a group of Iranian electronic warfare specialists were focused on its crumbs. For years, Iran had been playing a high-stakes game of collect and analyze. Every time a smaller US drone like a Scan Eagle went missing near the border, or a Predator glided too close to Iranian airspace, the IRGC wasn't just looking for wreckage. They were performing a digital autopsy. They dissected the flight controllers. They mapped the circuit boards. They studied how these machines breathe through the airwaves. They weren't just looking at the carbon fiber. They were mapping the digital DNA of the entire American unmanned fleet. In the shadows of the IRGC's Electronic Warfare Division, they didn't see the US military as an invincible force. They saw it as a massive, complex set of signals that could be decoded. These engineers didn't work in flashy command centers. They worked in the dark, in fortified bunkers buried deep beneath the Zagros Mountains. Imagine the scene: rows of specialists hunched over oscilloscopes and signal analyzers, the only light in the room coming from the cold blue glow of monitors tracking the invisible pulse of US satellite frequencies. They were waiting, they were listening, and they were learning the exact handshake protocols that linked the drones in the sky to the controllers on the ground. But they faced a massive tactical dilemma. Most air defense systems are built for one thing: destruction. If an intruder enters your airspace, you lock on with radar and launch a surface-to-air missile. But the Iranians knew that blowing up an RQ-170 would be a strategic failure. If the drone exploded at 50,000 feet, the secret sensors, the high-resolution cameras, and the encrypted hard drives would be reduced to dust. To truly win this war, they didn't need to kill the beast. They had to capture it. They called their strategy the spider web. It was a plan built on absolute patience. They knew that the Sentinel's greatest strength was its stealth, its ability to hide from radar, but they also identified its Achilles heel, its total, absolute dependence on the GPS satellite constellation. The drone is a slave to the stars. It needs those timing signals to know its position, its altitude, and its way home. If you cut that leash, the beast becomes a blind animal. But if you could replace that leash with one of your own, you could lead the beast wherever you wanted. This required a massive, hidden infrastructure. Along the jagged, 900-mile stretch of the Zagros Mountains, Iran had quietly deployed a network of indigenous radar arrays and high-powered terrestrial transmitters. These weren't just jammers designed to create noise. They were sophisticated impersonators. They were built to mimic the exact signal structure of the Navstar GPS satellites orbiting 12,000 miles above the Earth. Look at the geography here. The narrow valleys and high peaks of the Zagros provided the perfect tactical masking. Iranian teams could hide their transmitters from US signal intelligence, waiting until the drone was in the perfect kill zone before activating the web. They weren't just preparing a strike, they were preparing a digital kidnapping. By December 2011, the trap was set. The Iranian engineers had mapped the Sentinel's return to base logic. They knew exactly how the aircraft would react if it lost its primary command link. it would look for the stars. It would look for its GPS coordinates to find its way back to Afghanistan. And that was the moment they were waiting for. They didn't want to break the drone's mind. They wanted to give it a new reality. They were ready to tell the most advanced aircraft in history the most convincing lie it had ever heard. And the secret to that lie wasn't in a missile or a bomb. It was in a technique so subtle, the American pilots wouldn't even know they had been cheated until the beast was already sitting on an Iranian runway. To understand how they pulled off the ultimate electronic heist, we have to look at the math behind the deception. So how exactly does a stealth ghost get caught by its own shadow? To understand this, we have to flip the concept of stealth on its head. The RQ-170 was designed to be invisible to radar. That means its shape and skin are engineered to scatter or absorb high-energy radio waves from air defense networks. It's like wearing a mirror suit in a dark room. But here's the problem. Stealth doesn't mean silence. Even a ghost needs to talk to the stars. The Sentinel is essentially a flying computer that relies on two primary lifelines. One is the control link, the tether that allows pilots in Afghanistan to tell it where to go. The second is the GPS link, the cosmic map that tells the drone where it actually is. In 2011, Iran didn't need to break the stealth coding. They didn't even need to crack the complex, encrypted military control signals. They just needed to talk louder than the satellites. This is the art of GPS spoofing, and it is far more subtle than traditional jamming. Jamming is just noise. It's like someone screaming in your ear so you can't hear a conversation. If Iran had simply jammed the signal, the drone's computer would have realized it was under attack and triggered its emergency return to base protocol. But spoofing? That's a lie. It's like someone whispering wrong directions into your ear so convincingly that you think you're driving home, but you're actually driving straight into a trap. Think of it like this. You're driving on a massive highway in the dead of night. You're following the signs to get back to your city. Now, imagine a team of experts silently swapping every single sign on that highway. You see a sign that says US base 50 miles, but in reality, that sign is pointing you directly into an enemy garage. You don't realize you're going the wrong way because the data look perfectly normal. This is exactly what the Iranian engineers did. They didn't cut the satellite signal, they overrode it. GPS signals traveling from 12,000 miles in space are incredibly weak by the time they hit the ground. They are a mere whisper. Iran used ground-based transmitters to broadcast a much stronger, fake GPS signal that mimicked the exact structure and rhythm of the real thing. To the drone's computer, the fake signal looked more reliable than the real one. Then, the Iranians slowly, carefully shifted the coordinates. They fed the aircraft a false reality where it believed it was at the correct altitude and coordinates for a friendly base in Afghanistan. But in physical space, the plane was actually hundreds of miles away, hovering over a landing strip in northeastern Iran. Because the drone believed its altitude was correct, it didn't trigger an emergency landing. It performed a perfect, controlled descent. It touched down with its landing gear down and its sensors intact because it thought it was home. The beast didn't fall out of the sky. It was invited indoors. This incident changed everything. Proved that in the 21st century, a few hundred lines of clever code can be more devastating than $100 million missile. It shifted the doctrine of air superiority from who has the best wings to who has the best wavelengths. Capturing the RQ-170 wasn't just a loss of hardware. It was the collapse of the illusion that technology is an absolute shield. We spend weeks researching these technical deep dives to bring you the truth behind the headlines. Everything you see here is researched and animated by humans from scratch. So, if you want to understand the evolving threats of the modern battlefield, from the Baver 373 to the F-35, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. But you won't want to miss our next trip into the shadows of global military tech. Thanks for watching.